I think we'll crack on. I think no one else has asked to join in the last couple of moments. So just getting my screen so I can see my chat and everything. Great. Okay, good. Well, welcome everybody. I'm Eleanor from Birth Sang. I want to start by congratulating you on your pregnancy, wherever you are in that pregnancy. In this class, we are going to be looking at 3 knowledge gaps that parents-to-be can have, and we're going to be filling them up in this session. So it's going to be quite practical and quite useful. And by the end of the hour or so, you should be feeling a bit different. The 3 gaps are that you don't know what you don't know. So how do you know what to learn? You also might think that you should be doing the single worst possible thing in labour, and it makes labour harder, longer and more painful. And also you often don't really know about your choices. So we're going to go through all of those 3, and then we're going to finish up at the end of the session with a Q&A. Now, I'm very happy to answer questions as we go through. You can use the chat function or unmute yourself if you prefer. If it's kind of on topic, that I'll try and answer it as we go along. If it's a bit off topic, then I might push the question to the end. But when we get to the Q&A at the end, basically I'll make sure I go through the chat and that I don't forget to answer. So I've answered every single question that we get. And by the end of this session, all of these gaps will be filled and you're going to start feeling more confident and ready for birth. So this is a free taster class. It's free because I'm super passionate about labour and birth, and people often overlook antenatal classes and don't value them, and I think that's a shame. So I do this to kind of like help people see what they're going to get. And my antenatal classes are different than others because they're very specific, and my focus is completely on labour and birth, as it is one of the very most important days of your whole life, and you are going to remember it for your whole life. My classes are also really comprehensive, and they will give you both knowledge about birth and also some skills to help you cope. And also my classes are very affordable and great value with loads and loads of information. So this is a free taster class. I also have a paid course, which can be done either live in this sort of format where I mentor you through the learning on a particular day at a particular time, or there's a self-guided version more along the lines of a traditional online course where you kind of work through all the modules on your own at your own pace. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that at the end of the session. And if you work with me, you will know that everything I give you to learn is presented in an easy to understand way, and I hope you'll see that and agree from that this evening. I also always provide notes so you don't have to, and again, all of the things that are key bits of information that I'm giving you out tonight, some of the slides and stuff that I'm going to go through, I'm going to email it to you tonight so you don't have to write anything down. I'm always on hand to answer all of your questions, either as we're going along or at the end. And I also offer emotional support as well as this kind of learning as well. So once you finish my course, you will feel 100% confident and completely ready for birth. But let's have a little try. Let's get started now. And before we kind of kick off with our learning this evening, I've got a question for you. And this question is for both of you. So if you're a birth partner, then welcome. And I've just seen that says a couple of people have asked to join. I'm just admitting them. And yeah, so if you're a birth partner, then the question is for you as well from your perspective. Okay, so my question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready for birth do you feel right now, either as a birth partner or as a pregnant person? So have a think, on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready for birth do you feel right now? Where 1 is like, I'm so far from ready, it's untrue, and 10 is like, yeah, bring it on, I'm like gagging for it. So drop it in the chat, and we'll have a look and see kind of where everyone's head is at. And as I say, if you're a birth partner, feel free to like write it from your perspective as a birth partner. So if there's two of you, you might want to kind of write two things. And we're going to come back to that. I'm going to come back to that chat in a moment, and we'll have a little look and see, you know, where you are. So also in this session, a bit later on, towards the end, I'm going to be asking for a volunteer who would be happy to unmute themselves for a couple of minutes and just have a quick conversation with me about cake. So I'm just putting that out there now so you can have a think about it, and then when it comes to it, I will ask again for a volunteer, and please feel free to drop in the chat, or you could drop in now saying, yeah, happy to chat. That would be great. It just saves me embarrassment of kind of going and talking to myself later, which I'm very happy to do. And if you know me, I think there's a couple of familiar faces in the group today. You'll know that I can talk at great length to myself about anything, but it's always nice to have a conversation, and your sound will be recorded, but not your face. So let's have a little look as to where we are in how we feel. So let's look and see what people are saying. So I asked you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready for birth do you feel? Lisa's saying 6, great start. Kwan, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. By the way, if I butcher your name, please do correct me, because I hate it when people get my name wrong. So is saying 5. Namala saying 7, so that's kind of quite good, halfway, a bit higher. Anna is saying 4. I know how to pronounce your name because I know someone called Anna, so I hope you say it the same way. So you're saying 4. Val's also said 4, so kind of bit on the lower half. Michaela 7, Jamie 6, Tanika is on 4. We've kind of like, everyone's kind of around the middle, but we kind of, yeah, not quite fully there, are we? Mario and Sunny saying 5, Julie 7 and 7, Julie and partner 7 and 7, Julie and Renato saying 10 and 5. So one of you is totally ready, one of you not so much. So we need to kind of get you on the same page there. Maria saying 3, 4, pregnant, 2, birth partner. Okay, so actually as a pregnant person, you're like feeling, yeah, actually I could go there. Honestly, birth partner, it's completely understandable, and often you do feel very disconnected because like you're not the one with the thing growing inside of you. Like when you're pregnant, you know from the first time you get that blue line, you're like, okay, this thing's coming out somehow, I've got to like get there. So you know, I totally get it, but don't worry, you're in the right place, you're in totally the right place. This class is absolutely for you as well. And okay, I can see Charlotte saying 7, Daniel 4, Susie 7, Charlotte, another Charlotte 7 to 8, Stefania 6, Maria, oh, you got a big group tonight, 7, Naz 2, don't worry Naz, yeah, I know that it can feel really overwhelming. D and Gray are saying D is 6, Gray 7, so around the same. Nobody's a 10, nobody's a 9, nobody's an 8. Few people are 7, most people lower than that. 2's our lowest. My lowest I've ever had is minus 750, which is feeling very unready. But I'm happy to say that she did actually sign up for my paid course, and at the end went from minus 750 to a 9 out of 10. So great, it is possible to feel better about it. Laura saying 5, Sophie 7. So again, a wide range, but generally most people are in the middle, okay, which is completely normal. We've got a good range, so everyone's feeling like, you know, I'm getting there. I'm feeling like I'm on the road. I've got a journey to go still. So Amanda said 5. Did I say that? Yes. Okay, right. Let's get back. It's very easy with such a big group to get very distracted by what's going on in the chat. So let's stay on target. Okay. So let's talk about our knowledge gaps. So let's have a little think about these so we can fill them, and you can leave this session tonight feeling like you have filled 3 of your knowledge gaps. So first of all, our first knowledge gap is that you don't know what you don't know. And I think this is a reason why a lot of people don't always value antenatal classes, because you don't really understand what you're going to learn from it. And it's not your fault, because we don't learn about birth at school. And even if you've had a baby already, you still don't magically know how it's all supposed to work, especially if you've had a difficult experience. And so how can you choose an antenatal class when you haven't even got a clue what it can or even should be covering? So I want to share with you a brilliant and simple roadmap to help you get to grips with what you need to learn to feel 100% confident and completely ready for birth. And it's called the ABCDEs of labour. It's like a good place to start, the ABCs. And this is something that I have created and I have constructed in order to help make sense of like what there is out there. So I'm going to show you a slide. So it's a bit easier for us to see. I know some people prefer to read things and see things visually, and it just is a bit more interesting than just seeing my face the whole time. So I'm going to just share my screen with you. And this slide that I'm going to show you is something that will be in your inbox later. So you don't need to write this down. Where are we? Oh, so my Zoom sometimes doesn't like sharing. Oh, there it is. It's appearing now, sharing my PowerPoint, but this time it does. So let's start at the beginning. Good. Okay, we're there. Technology, brilliant until it doesn't work. Okay, ABCDEs of labour. So first, let's start at the very beginning. Let's start at A. A stands for anatomy and physiology. Anatomy is the parts of the body. So in labour and birth, we want to talk about the pelvis, we want to talk about the uterus and the baby, of course, as well. And the physiology is the way that the parts of the body work. Hang on, I'm just being told that my screen is not sharing. Bring your shared window to the front. Oh, let me try again. Did anyone see that? Did you see that? Oh, Zoom, what are you doing? Come on. Oh, I can see it now. That looks better to me. Okay, good. Thank you, whoever it was that unmuted yourself. We're jumping ahead. Look, it won't let me go backwards. Oh, buggy, stupid thing. Okay, there you go. La la la, this is the benefit of a live class. It's real life here, folks. Okay, so anatomy and physiology, where were we? So anatomy are the parts of the body. The physiology is the way that the parts of the body work, okay, and the processes that they go through. So of course they're inextricably linked because you don't get a part of the body without it working in some way. So we're talking about pregnancy, we're talking about the process of labour and birth. So anatomy and physiology is about understanding how the body works in labour and also understanding how the baby moves in labour as well. And it really, this area of anatomy and physiology, in my opinion, underpins every other bit of knowledge that you get. It is like the foundation for everything else, because everything else that you learn will relate back to the anatomy and physiology. And so I personally put a lot of emphasis on anatomy and physiology in my classes. I think it's firstly fascinating and interesting, but also really crucial to get to grips with what's happening, because if you don't understand that, nothing else is really going to make sense. So absolutely first point. Then we come to B, which you had a sneak preview of a minute ago, which stands for benefit the body. And it's all very well knowing how the body works, how the anatomy and physiology work. But if we don't know how to help the body or avoid things that hinder it, then it's not useful information to us. It's just, oh, that's very nice. That's how that works. Lovely. How is that useful to me? So to make sense of the anatomy and physiology and also how we can benefit the body, we are going to be having a little demo in this session as well. And we're going to have a little bit of learning about anatomy, and we're going to be learning a little bit about how we can benefit the body. So we're going to put this into context in just a moment. Okay, so anatomy and physiology and benefit the body are very, very closely linked together. And I don't think you can really have one without the other. Then we come to C, which stands for cope with contractions. And this is a very broad area, and it represents all the different kinds of tools and techniques that you can use to help you get through labour and birth one contraction at a time. And there's different methods. I mean, hypnobirthing, for example, would come under this category. But I personally don't believe that one particular system or one particular method suits everybody, because we all engage in the world in different ways, and one size doesn't fit all, just like one pair of trousers does not fit every single person in the world, like from a physical point of view. Like one way of coping with labour isn't going to be perfect for everybody. So actually, it's about having a nice broad view here as well, and understanding not only different methods, but the principles behind what the methods are. And so that means that you can, understand how you can find something that's going to uniquely help you cope. And I like to call this the labor triangle of focus, because all of these three principles of how we cope with contractions fall broadly into three areas, and you can connect one or two or three of the corners of the triangle, if you like, to come up with a method or a way that uniquely works for you and the way you interact with the world. So when we understand the principles, then it means that we've got a really, really wide range of things to call upon. Whereas if you learn one thing and it doesn't really work for you, then you haven't got anything. What's interesting as well is when you learn the anatomy and physiology and you know how to benefit the body, when you start learning about how to cope with contractions, you start to understand not only how each way of coping works, but why it works, because you understand how it relates back to the anatomy and physiology. So the context around the way these principles and the way that they help you cope with labor become clearer, because it's all relating back to the anatomy, and everything starts to kind of fit into a big jigsaw puzzle. Then we come to D, which stands for don't forget the birth partner, and big thumbs up and yay to all the birth partners in the room today. And this is a really important thing. We mustn't forget the birth partner, because the words and the actions of the birth partner in the room can have a really profound effect on the way that the mother copes with contractions and the way that her physiology works. So actually, it's not just a case of being a cheerleader, although it's nice to have encouraging words from your partner. There's actually lots of really practical things that you can do. There's lots of ways you can be emotionally supportive. And of course, there's some logistics stuff in there as well. What's the route to the hospital? What are you going to pack in your hospital labor bag? What are your birth preferences? All of those kind of things that are going to help you manage the situation and advocate for your partner. So this is a really important part of the whole antenatal journey. Then finally, we come to E, which stands for enhance your emotions. And your mindset can also play a really big role in labor. And there are ways that we can help train our brain to be more positive, but also your emotions can have a physiological effect on the body as well. So it's not just a case of saying, oh, keep your chin up, love, it'll all be all right. Actually, there's a direct link back to the physiology of labor and birth that's connected with the way that the mother is feeling. So it's more complex than that. And what's really interesting is that when you learn the foundations of labor and what is happening in the body and the anatomy and the physiology side of it, the mechanics, the biology of what's going on, and when we understand how we can help it, how we can benefit it, and when you layer on all the different ways we've learned how to cope with contractions through all of those different principles, and when your birth partner feels really confident about what they need to do to be as supportive as possible, basically, when you have learned all the stuff of the A's and the B's and the C's and the D's, what emerges from that as part of that journey is the icing on the cake, if you like, which is the emotional side of it. And you actually find that you feel like a lot more positivity, and you find that you feel more calm and relaxed and empowered and in control and knowledgeable, at ease, confident, all of these sort of words that you might describe if you were feeling 100% confident and completely ready for birth. And there are things that we can do with our mindset, but actually this whole journey comes out, you come out of the other end feeling actually really, really different. So here is a really nice sort of summary of everything that you can learn about labour and birth. And you have this framework now to understand what there is to know and what to get from an antenatal class. Are you feeling a little bit more ready? Is that helping you come up the scale a little bit more? Maybe half a point or 1 point, maybe more. So with a bit of luck, hopefully that is starting you to feel a little bit more that you have a bit more knowledge, about the kinds of things that you might be wanting to learn in an antenatal class. Okay, so let's move on now to our second knowledge gap. And this is an interesting one because many people are doing in labour and birth the single worst possible thing in labour. And it's making their labour and birth harder, longer, and more painful. So, next question for you. Do you know, can you guess what is the single worst thing a woman can do during labour and birth? So have a think, don't overthink it. Drop it in the chat. We'll come back in a moment and have a look. Sadly, TV and movies are quite possibly the worst antenatal education you can get, and actually are widely spreading a huge amount of misinformation about what we should be doing in labour and birth, and will often depict birth in very overdramatic and frankly quite unrealistic ways at every stage of the process. Even so-called documentaries like One Born Every Minute, which I strongly advise you not to watch, will edit the births in such a way to make it match the EastEnders version, basically. And it means that actually lots of people go into the birthing room thinking you should be doing something that's actually quite unhelpful. So let's have a look to see what people are saying. Okay, let me scroll back through. Okay, it's a really big class, so I'm going to like quickly go through. So Sam says laying down, Julie and Renato laying on their back, Imogen and Adrian lying down, Maria Osan panic or screaming, Mads and Julie stressing out, Stefania lying on your back, Mara and Sunny being scared, Kwan not relaxing, Maria panic, Charlotte being too scared panicking. There's definitely themes emerging here, isn't there? Shit herself. Well, yeah. Although actually the sensation of birth is quite similar to sitting. So, but I'm assuming you mean befriend. Amanda saying screaming. Charlotte saying preconceived expectations of birth. Naz is saying push when you're not supposed to. Okay, so there's actually a kind of a broad selection of suggestions there. There's a few people who've hit it on the head. So basically, the interesting thing is that the single worst thing, some of you are right, the single worst thing that you can do in labour is to lie on your back. So some of you got that, some of you already knew, but not everyone. Oh, hang on, sorry, I've just managed to bring myself out of Zoom. People keep joining and it keeps throwing me out. So yeah, basically lying on your back is actually really, really unhelpful. So let's dig into this a little bit. Okay, in order to understand this a little bit better, what we're going to do is have a little look at some anatomy and physiology, and we're going to meet baby Nelly and the pelvis, and we're going to be seeing how the baby moves down the pelvis, and then we're going to have a little look at why it is so important to avoid lying on your back. So we're going to have a little look at the benefit of the body bit. Okay, so we're going to go through that now, and in order to do that, I'm going to stand up and move back a little bit so you can see better. So I'm just hoping that I'm close enough to see if anyone else joins. Okay, and I'm going to just shift my camera a tiny little bit. Yeah, that looks about right. Okay, so this is baby Nelly. She's not a real one, as you can see, but she is quite sweet. Some antenatal dolls are like freaky looking, but she's quite a sweet one. This is a plastic model of a female pelvis. And both Nelly and the pelvis are slightly smaller than an average size, so they're probably quite well matched. And unless you have a cesarean, your baby has to pass down through this hole through your pelvis in order to be born. Like there's no way around it unless you have a surgical intervention. So let's have a little look and see how that works. Now, this is a very quick version. So oh, we've got people dropping in and out here today. This is a quick version. So let's have a little look. So first of all, your baby will start labor, head down and facing towards your right-hand side. Now, there is more than one position that a baby can be in during labor, and there's more than one starting position. But for the purposes of this session, we're going to go with the most common and the optimal one, so the one that we would like to aim for. So the baby's starting facing sideways on, and your labor will begin. And it won't begin in that EastEnders way of like the water's breaking everywhere and suddenly going, oh, let's get to hospital. That doesn't really happen like that. So it's probably going to be quite gentle. You might not even realize you're in labor and you'll be a bit like, is that a twinge? Is that not? And then it will start progressing. And so you go into the earlier stages of labor. And what will happen with your baby in your pelvis is it is going to start to rotate in a clockwise direction. Okay, so your baby's going to start turning really slowly, really gently. And in the meantime, your labor is going to be progressing and you're going to be finding that your contractions get stronger and they get more frequent and they get more intensive. And all the while, your baby is very, very slowly, very gently turning in a clockwise direction. And then we get to the point where our contractions are really ramping up. Perhaps we are going into active labor, the point where we might go to the hospital. The contractions are feeling quite full on now. They're quite close together. They're quite long in duration, maybe up to 90 seconds. They feel very intensive. And all the while, your baby is turning in a clockwise direction. And then in another part of the anatomy, in the cervix, and I'm going to represent this by my hand here. So my fist is going to represent your cervix. Now your cervix is much smaller than this, but we'll represent it here. So in another part of your body, the baby's head is pressing on the cervix, and the cervix is thinning and effacing and opening around the baby's head. It's dilating around the baby's head. And we know that it's got to get to full dilation. Now, does anybody know how many centimeters is the kind of accepted wisdom as to how many centimeters your cervix needs to dilate until it's fully dilated around the baby's head? If you know, pop it in the chat. So the cervix is dilating, your labor's really ramping up, and all the while your baby's turning. And then until we get to a point where two things happen. One is that your cervix becomes fully open and dilated around the baby's head. And let's just have a look and see what you were saying. So Julian Rato said 10, Mads and Judy said 10, Stefania said 10, Jamie said 10. Yeah, you're right, it's 10 centimeters. Actually, interestingly, from a physiological point of view, 10 centimeters isn't very accurate, but it's the accepted wisdom. So for the purposes of this session, we'll go with it and we'll discuss why it's inaccurate if you come to my course. So where were we? So two things have got to happen. One, the cervix has got to be open fully 10 centimeters around the baby's head. And the second thing is that the baby completes a quarter of a circle turn and is now facing towards the back. So it started facing sideways on, and now it's facing towards your back in this position. And when these two things happen, the baby's head will drop right down into the bottom of the pelvis and actually kind of come under the bones of the pelvis, and it will press hard on the pelvic floor muscles, which I'm representing with my hands here. And it will trigger the body to go into the next stage of labor where the body starts expelling the baby. It's called the fetal ejection reflex, which is basically where your uterus will start pushing your baby out. So some people will call it the pushing stage, but actually, again, from a physiological point of view, not always helpful to think of it in those terms. So the second stage of labor. So what happens then? Now, it might seem like the baby's head has now come out of the bottom of the pelvis, and while it's cleared the bone structure of the bottom of the pelvis, the head is not yet visible. Okay, so it's cleared the bones, but it hasn't cleared the soft tissue. And that's what happens in the second stage of labor. It comes down through the soft tissue. So the baby's head comes down through the vagina, through the birth canal. It meets the perineum, the vulva, and that parts around the baby's head. The baby's head crowns and is born facing backwards. Okay. And then, and this is where it gets really crazy, if you hadn't thought it was kind of a bit crazy already. And then once the head has merged, the body will turn quite quickly, probably within a few moments, definitely by the next contraction. The body will then turn back through 90 degrees, back to its starting position pretty quickly, like really quick. And then the shoulders and the rest of the body will be born, and you get to meet your baby. It's a girl. So this process of twisting and turning in order to navigate the pelvis is the way that the baby comes down through that hole in the pelvis. Now, that's a very quick version of that. And, you know, if you come to my course, we talk about why the baby turns in that way, not just that it turns in that way. There was like the 2-minute version. And in my course, we talk about this for like half an hour. So, yeah, so that's our first bit of anatomy and physiology, right? So our first way of understanding how the baby moves down through the pelvis in labor. But of course, having this knowledge on its own doesn't help us. It doesn't give us anything. Like you're like, oh, that's nice. Yeah, I'm going to go back to my life now. See ya. Not helpful. So what we need to do is understand, why is it so important to be in an upright position or not lying down when you're in labor birth? So let's be really clear. If you're not lying down, we would say you're in an upright position. So basically, upright position, you might think it means standing, but actually it would mean any position that's not lying on your back. And for the purposes of this class, I'm going to include even lying on your side in that position. So why? What is going on when we're lying down compared with being in an upright position? So in order to do that, we're going to, once again, just sort of have a little bit of a demo. And I'm going to move my screen as well to do that. So you can see here that I've got a ball, okay? And I'm going to use this ball to help make my point here. We can see that the ball is roughly analogous to the size of the baby's head. And it just makes it a bit easier to show it. So I'm going to just move my screen down so we can see what's happening. Let it fall on the floor. So we can see what's happening when we're lying down. So I'm just going to come down and okay. So when you're lying down on a bed, your body is in this position, okay? So when you're in this position, your pelvis is in this position here, okay? So basically what we just saw is your baby will start with the head coming in sideways, facing sideways. It will rotate during the first stage of labor to the back, and then it will come down, the head will be born, and then the body will twist again, and the rest of the body will be born. So that's basically what we saw a moment ago. So what's going on? Let's have a look using this ball. So this ball represents the baby's head. So let's get the baby's head in the pelvis. You can see immediately I don't need to hold on to it, okay? And I'm just going to turn it around a little bit here. We've got the inlet of the pelvis here, so the baby's going to go through in that direction. And we can see that the bones of the pelvis here are kind of holding the head in place. And if I tip it up a tiny little bit, you can also see underneath here, just that little bit there is the tailbone. So the bones of the pelvis are actually holding the head in place. And in fact, when you're lying down in this position, the outlet of the pelvis is squeezed into the smallest shape possible. Okay, so the bones move in such a way that it makes the hole as small as it can go. So I don't even need to hold it. So remember, in the first stage of labor, the head has got to rotate. So we've got to try and rotate the ball, rotate the head. And these bones are holding onto it and creating resistance. So it's got to rotate. And eventually it will rotate into the right position. And then it's got to come down through the bottom of the pelvis. So now my hand is representing contraction. And you can see it's actually quite hard to get the damn head through. So all the while, these bones here are causing resistance to the head of the baby and making it hard. Every single contraction, it's basically making it hard for the baby to come through. Whoops. Now, eventually, the head will come out through the bottom of the pelvis, but it's not just gone, because it's not a ball, is it? It's a body. So then the rest of the body has got to navigate. So then the shoulders have got to come down through, and every part of the body has got to be coming through this hole that's being held in its smallest possible shape. So let's see what happens when we get up off our back and get into an upright position. So let's come back up again. Sorry, I'm just lifting up my screen a bit so that you're not looking at my chest. These exciting live action classes. Okay, so what did we see a moment ago? We saw the pelvis in this position. Okay, so this is the position the pelvis is in when you're lying on your back. So as soon as you get into an upright position, the bones of the pelvis are able to move back to their normal positions, and particularly the sacrum, which is this triangular bone I'm holding on to at the back. And once you get into an upright position, the sacrum goes back to normal, and this is what it does. Can you see how that opened there? And this bone here, the tailbone, is also able to move as well out of the way if necessary. And in fact, you can immediately see there's a lot more space. And also, these two bones here, these are your sitting bones, excuse me, are also able to open. And it's a subtle movement, and it's hard to see online, but perhaps see if you can just notice. Can you see how that is able to open as well? So in every direction, the internal capacity of the pelvis is able to open. And in fact, depending in what position you adopt, we can create up to 33% more space in the pelvis in order to create space for the baby to turn in the first stage of labor, and then move down through the outlet of the pelvis in the second stage of labor, which is astonishing, really, isn't it? 33%, that's a third more space we can create by getting into an upright position. Now, not every single position is going to give you 33%. Even if a position only gives me 20%, I am going to take that 20%. It could be that being the position that I adopt upright is only going to give me 15%. I am going to take that percent. I am going to take any space and any flexibility of capacity in my pelvis to help my baby be born. So I think that even if you knew that being in an upright position or not laying on your back was going to be beneficial, hopefully you understand really fully why being in an upright position is so important and what a difference it makes to the physiology of the baby as it comes down through the pelvis. So now we know what to do. We need to be as upright as possible in labor, throughout the whole of labor, to help your baby move within the pelvis and rotate within the pelvis, and also to move down through the pelvis. So now we've kind of got a whole load more knowledge in our knowledge bank now. And is it helping you feel a bit more ready for birth? I can see we've got a question. Kwan is saying, how about lying on your side? Is it the same as lying on your back? This is a really, really great question. And basically, the short answer is lying on your side is going to be better than lying on your back, yes. However, when you're in an upright position, there are 31 ways that it can benefit your body. And some of those ways will still apply when you're lying on your side, but some of them will not. So it's a long-winded answer, if I'm honest. And to get really the true answer to that question, that's what I go into during my course. So we understand all about the complexities between the different positions that we have and the other different ways that we cope in labor, and also those 31 different benefits and what they mean. Because we've learned about one benefit, being in an upright position, but there's 31 ways we can benefit the body in labor and birth. There's lots and lots of ways. So so the short answer is yes, lying on your side is better, but the long answer is it's complicated. But yeah, lying on your side would come into like the next best thing after lying on your back, or the least worst thing after lying on your back. So good question. If you want to elaborate on that, then come back at the end and we can chat more about that. Okay, so I just need to where were we? We were just here. Sorry, I'm just trying to get back to my slide, which completely disappeared on me earlier. Oh, we've got someone coming in late. Okay, so where were we? We've done our first 2 knowledge gaps. Hopefully you're feeling they are nicely filled now. And so let's think about our third one. And remember, we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So if you've got any questions that pop into your head from something that we did 5 minutes ago, please feel free to drop it in the chat and we'll come back to it at the end. Okay, so our third knowledge gap is around our choices, because we don't often understand or know what choices we truly have. And interestingly, in the UK, you always have a choice. Every midwife appointment, every blood test, every scan, every time somebody puts their hand on or in your body, you always have a choice, and it's something you can accept or decline. And in the UK, interestingly, the only thing you're legally required to do is register your baby after birth with the registrar office. Now, of course, this might be different if you're outside of the UK, and if you are, then let's chat offline about what's happening in where you live. But it's a good idea to understand the legal requirements of your country, because they do vary. But in the UK, there's no legal requirement for anything. Now, most people are like, well, why would I not want a scan or whatever blood test? You're right, but the point is we've got a choice. But the thing is, if you don't actually understand anything about that choice, then it's not really a choice. I mean, it's all very well, oh, I've got a choice about everything, but if you don't understand what the choice is, it's still not really a choice. So let's explore this a little bit. And in order to do that, I want to use a non-birth example, because I like analogies. And if you know me, you'll know that I like using analogies to describe what's going on. So this is the point. It would be really nice to have a volunteer and somebody who would have a little chat with me about cake. It's very simple. And whilst I'm recording the session, I'm only recording my own face here. So your voice might come up. You can unmute yourself, but you don't have to put a video on if you don't want. So if anybody would be happy to do that, if you could just drop it in the chat. I don't think anybody said they would. I might just have a very quick look back through. I don't think anyone said they would be happy to do that yet. So it would be really nice. Come on, people. Come on, let's have one little volunteer. Oh, okay, brilliant. Imogen and Adrian, excellent. Thank you very much. So, oh, you've unmuted yourself already. Brilliant. Yeah. So I can see you, but nobody else can because I've highlighted myself. So I hope that's okay. Or would you be happy?
Fine, don't worry. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to remove that spotlight then, and when you talk, then we'll see you. Okay. So, Imogen, Adrian, how far along in your pregnancy are you?
23 weeks.
Okay, so just past halfway. How are you feeling? How are you feeling at the moment?
Okay, yeah, fine. Not too bad.
You nervous?
You don't really sound convincing, actually. No, I'm joking. Completely understandable. Don't worry, you're in the right place. Okay, so where are we? Yes. So I'm going to ask you a simple question. It's not hard, I promise. but it is a hypothetical question. And so that does mean I am not going to turn up at your house in a minute with a little box, okay? Sorry about that. But if you live in Frome, let me know and I'll arrange that. No, I'm joking. Okay, so I can see that you're hungry. Would you like some chocolate cake?
Yes, please.
Okay, brilliant. That was a pretty quick response.
It is when you're pregnant.
Now, you have, without any judgment, I'm sure that you have had lots of cake in your life, and you've had chocolate, and some of it was, and you've also had chocolate cake. Some of it was good, some of it was not so good. But you know that overall, from all of your wealth of experience throughout your whole life, if I give you some chocolate cake right now, you can extrapolate whether or not you want it and whether it's going to be worth eating. And your brain went through that entire convoluted process like that. You're like, yeah, thank you very much. Actually, that whole process went on in your brain, and it's very super quick. Okay, so let me ask you this. I can see that you're hungry. Would you like an argy-bargy?
I don't know what one of those is, so I have to think
But
about
would you
that.
like one?
I don't know. Maybe if it's any good, I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to take that as a yes. A tentative yes. I have slightly bullied you into that decision, so I do apologise about that. The reality is that whilst you have tentatively said yes, and it's surprising how many people do say yes, actually, the reality is you have absolutely no bloody idea what an argy-bargy is, and you have no idea whether it is a nice thing or a horrible thing. And you have made this decision based on probably coercion more than anything else. Yep. and the need of feeling like an answer was needed. And I would put that in the category of uninformed choice. You have made a choice, but you are not informed about the choice you have made. You have just gone, yeah, okay, I'll go with it. Yeah. And that's not useful ever, but particularly not useful in pregnancy and labour and birth. We want to make sure that all of the choices and the decisions that we make are informed choices. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you, Imogen and Adrian, to mute yourself again, and we're going to come back to this in a moment. So, and I'm going to ask you again. So the thing is, one of the best ways that we can feel 100% confident and ready for birth is to ensure that every time we need to make a choice or a decision, we are making an informed one. And to do this, we need to use our brains. Okay, I'm talking both about the grey stuff in our head, but also about something else. And it's a decision-making process that I'm going to go through with you now that you can use to help turn any choice into an informed choice. Okay, so again, I'm going to share my screen and hope it works this time. Okay, yeah. Okay, yes, that's from the last time. Okay, so use your brain. Now, the brain model was created in the 1960s, and it's an acronym. And it applies brilliantly to labour and birth, and many people in the birth world use it, although it wasn't designed specifically for labour and birth, it was just designed to help make decisions. And the acronym BRAIN describes a series of questions that we can ask in order to find out more about something. So let's go through each one now. And again, this slide will be in your inbox by the end of the class, so you don't need to write it down, so you'll have it to refer to. So we begin with B, which stands for benefits. What are the benefits to this choice? What are the good things about it? Why would I do this thing? Why would I make this choice? And this is a pretty obvious place to start. Although, having said that, oftentimes during labour and pregnancy, we are presented with choices that are coming on the back of trying to avoid something else happening. So the actual benefit of the choice itself isn't always completely clear. Now, if you don't fully understand the benefit of doing something, then it's going to be really hard to make a good decision about it. So it's a really key starting point to make sure you understand fully. Now, I know we're talking about an argy-bargy, but I want to just put this into a real pregnancy birth context as we're going through it. And I want to use the example of having an induction because you've gone over your due date. And the reason I choose this example is because 30% of births in the UK start as induction, and actually those rates are climbing. That statistic was from a couple of years ago, and could be higher now. So it's going to be relevant to lots of you in this room. I mean, I think at the last count there was about 50 people. So it could be that, you know, at least 15 or 20 of you might have an induction and more of you might have a conversation about it. So it's a good one to use because a lot of people will find it's relevant. So what's the benefit of having an induction to start your labour when you've gone over your due date? Well, the benefit is that it will kickstart your labour artificially using drugs when your labour has not yet started. So that's one of the key benefits of having an induction to go of going past your due date. So then the next question we come to is risks. What are the risks to this choice? And again, benefits, risks are a pretty standard pros and cons of any decision-making process. So not total rocket science really at this point, but nevertheless, it's good to have basics. It's good to cover the basics. So what are the risks of this choice? What are the side effects? What are the bad things that might happen? What are the reasons why I might not want to make this choice? And let's put this again in the context of the induction of labour. So a risk of having an induction are that there is a drug administered to you, and that drug has effects on your body. Some of those effects we want. It kickstarts labour, it intensifies contractions. Some of them we might not want, and that because that drug has an effect on the mother and also has an effect on the baby. Sometimes it just means the effects can be too strong and that can cause distress to the baby, for example. So in this particular example, where there's a drug involved, often the side effects of the drugs are part of the risks that are going on. But it may be broader than that if it's not a drug involved. So it's really important to cover our bases and make sure we have the pros and cons. Then we come to A. This is where it starts getting more interesting. Alternatives. What are the alternatives to this choice? Is there anything else on offer? Is there anything else I can choose? Is there anything that is, has more intervention or less intervention or whatever? Is there more than one choice? And again, this is a really, really important question because it helps us to start widen our knowledge of this decision, and it helps us start seeing the bigger picture. Because in pregnancy and labour and birth, we're very rarely presented with a menu of choices. They don't say, we're a bit worried about X, so we think you should do A, B, C, or X, Y, Z. What would you like to do? It doesn't really work like that. What tends to happen more is your care provider will think of the pathway that they think is the best for you, and they will say, we're a bit worried about X, so we think you should do Y. And actually, you could have done A, B, and C, and X, Y, and Z, but they haven't really put that on the table. Now, sometimes their pathway is absolutely going to be the best pathway for you, but there can be some instances where, in fact, you might disagree with it and you might have some alternative values or things going on that mean that you want to try something else before you get to that choice. So this is a really good way of just seeing the bigger picture. Now, an alternative, when we add this to our example, is to an alternative to having an induction because you've gone over your due date is to do what we would call expectant management. And this is effectively where you go into hospital on a daily basis once you hit your due date, and you are monitored and your baby is monitored to make sure that everything is absolutely fine. And you continue doing this on a daily basis until you either go into labour spontaneously or the situation changes, and it means that an intervention is the better course of action. So this is an absolutely completely valid alternative to an induction, but one that is very, very rarely presented unless you actually push for it. So benefits, risks, alternatives. Next, we have implications. What are the implications to this choice? Now, this might seem a bit like risks, but actually, whereas risks are directly related to something, the implications are kind of a bit more separate from it and are more about again, seeing the bigger picture. And for me, this is one of the most important questions, because it allows us to see not only the landscape around the decision that we're making, but what might happen as a result of it later on, like in an hour or in a day or in a week. Like, what does it mean in the grand scheme of things? And so it's not something that's going to surface when you talk about the risk, because if it's a drug, the side effects are already covered. So what do I mean by this then? Let's put this into context to get more meaning. An implication of having an induction because you go over your due date is that you have this drug that's administered to you, and the drug makes your labor come on very fast and with quite a lot of intensity. And so all of a sudden you're like in full on labor. And so that means that you might well be more likely to choose a pain relief when you might not have chosen one, or you might choose it earlier on in your labor, or you might choose a more like full on, pain relief. Like you might choose an epidural rather than just choosing gas and air, for example. Another implication of having an induction to go over your due date is the fact that you'll need to be monitored constantly. And that means an implication of being monitored is that you won't be able to go into a birth pools, for example. So if you have an induction of labor, getting in the pool is going to be off the table. So that being in the pool is not like really, a risk of induction, but nevertheless is something that's a knock-on effect of it. So understanding the implications is really, really an important question. Then finally, we come to N, which stands for nothing. What if I do nothing? What if I wait an hour, a day, a week? What if I just sit and think and see what happens? Is this an option? And this might seem like an odd question, but actually it's a great question for surfacing the urgency around which we're making this choice, and whether or not this choice is around like guidelines and a box ticking exercise, or whether there's a real concern about you and your baby that's making us want to make a choice. So it helps us understand the urgency. And if we think about that in the context of an induction of labor, if we do nothing when we've gone over our due date, it circles right back around to what our alternative was, which was expectant management. And that's effectively doing nothing, but keeping a really close eye on you. So there's a little bit of overlap with those questions there, but it's an absolutely valid thing. It's quite a common thing to it's insisted upon that you have an induction for a medical reason or whatever reason. And they say, no, you've got to come in and say, we're not going to let you go over your due date. You've got to come in on this date, and you turn up and they're like, oh yeah, we're a bit busy. Can you come back tomorrow? And you're like, well, it wasn't really that urgent, wasn't it? If you can bump me on your list to tomorrow. So it's about understanding like where that urgency lies. So benefits, risks, alternatives, implications, nothing. Really simple to remember acronym. Really powerful set of questions that can help turn any choice, any decision into an informed one. And in fact, it's a really great acronym to use not only for choices and decisions during pregnancy and labor and birth, but also as you research your choices as well. And if you come up with something and you think, oh, look, she talked about an epidural, what's an epidural? And you can use that framework to kind of understand more about that thing well in advance, because labor is not a time for discovery. Now is the time for discovery. So now is the time to do all that learning. Okay, so we've had a look at this BRAIN acronym. Let's now apply this to our example. So Imogen, if you want to like unmute, and we're going to apply this to our argy-bargy and just see how it affects your decision-making process. So the benefit of having an argy-bargy, by the way, I have made up an argy-bargy, just want to be really clear about that. It's hypothetical. Okay, so stay on target. The benefit of having an argy-bargy is that it will stop you feeling hungry, it tastes like curry, and it leaves you feeling happy inside. Oh. But the risks, Imogen, are that it contains nuts, and in 10% of cases can give you a headache. So consideration. The alternatives are a chocolate cake, chicken and rice, or an ujima flip. I made that one up as well. Where are we? The implications of having an argy-bargy is that dinner is in an hour, so you probably won't feel hungry then. and it's your favorite meal. And if you do nothing, Imogen, you'll still be hungry, but then dinner's soon. And so eventually the feeling will pass. So given this extra information you now know about an argy-bargy, would you like an argy-bargy?
No, thanks. I'd have chocolate cake.
So that felt like a really different response.
Yeah.
How was that decision-making process different for you?
I felt like I was fully informed. I knew what my options were, and I could choose what felt right for me.
Yeah. And, you know, I kind of coerced you into a decision earlier, which is very bad of me. But the second time around, you were like, no, yeah, I know what I want. I don't want that. I want that. Thanks. And it really changes the way that you not only make the decision, but actually feel about the decision as well, because you're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what I want here. So it's amazing how just this tiny little tool and this and just using these questions to surface more information can really change the way that you make decisions, but also the way that you feel about making them as well. So thank you very much for being great sports. You probably noticed as well that I talked about a what did I talk about? I talked about a Ujima flip, and basically I made that up as well. And the point is that quite often when you do this research, we're using the BRAIN acronym, we find that it surfaces new things that we don't know about. So it's good to have a notebook, note it down. Oh, what was an Ujima flip? Like, write that down. And then when you've done all your research about one thing, going on to an Ujima flip and researching that. And what we find is when we do it in this way, rather than just having this completely overwhelming the whole of Google, when you type, tell me about labor and birth, and Google says, well, there's 58 bazillion hits, where do you want to start? You know, you start with one thing and it will lead you on to something else, and you will find it will take you on this like organic journey through the things that you need to know and that are relevant to you based on the research that you're doing and what it brings up, you know, like saying, oh, well, an alternative to X is Y, so I need to know what Y is, and, you know, an implication of Y is Z, and so I need to know what Z is, and it will kind of like take you through the learning and what's relevant to you. So it can be a really useful tool in many, many ways. And in fact, I wrote a book, which I don't have, oh, it's on the shelf behind me there, Helping Birth. And I use the BRAIN framework for like every chapter, because I think it's such a powerful way to like get an all-rounded view about something. So brilliant. Excellent. So yeah, so I think that we've definitely filled the knowledge gap of informed choice. How are you feeling? Are you feeling a bit more ready for birth? I know that we've kind of overrun our time a tiny little bit. We're nearly there. But you know, now we know now all the things that we might want to learn with the labour ABCDEs. So we've got an idea of what antenatal classes might want to cover. We also now know the single best thing that you can do in labour to help your baby move through your pelvis, to adopt an upright position through labour and birth. And now you also understand how to use your brain in order to make informed choices. So can you see now, like when we do some of this learning, how we learn some of these things, it starts to help us feel different. It starts to help us feel a bit more ready for birth. Now, at the start of the session, I asked you a question. I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready for birth do you feel? And my question to you now is, how many points up the scale have you come since an hour ago when I first asked you that question? So if you've forgotten what you wrote, please feel free to go back through the chat and check, and drop now into the chat how many points up the scale you've gone. So you might want to say, I've gone from 4 to 6, or you might just want to say +2 or whatever it is. And just, you know, I want you to just reflect on how these 3 knowledge gaps that we filled are changing the way that you feel and how ready you feel for labour and birth. So let's have a look and see what people are saying. So Julie and Renato are saying 3 points up, now 8, fantastic. Stefania is saying +2. Anna, 1 to 2 points up, brilliant. Kwan +1, brilliant. Paula says 7. I can't remember what you said originally. Oh, there's too many people to scroll back through. I'm just going to assume it's at least up 1. Amanda +2. Stefania's saying, phone is going to die. Please send me the notes. Okay, yeah, no problem, Stefania. I'll send you the notes in an email later anyway. And if you want, you can email me and I can send you a replay and you can just watch the end of the session if you like. So, because I'm recording this one, so no problem. Daniel saying +2, Imogen and Adrian 2 to 3, fantastic. It's a small step in the right direction, right? Taneka saying +1, Lizzie from 6 to 7, brilliant. Jamie 1 to 2, D and Gray, D up by 1 to 7, Gray up by 1 to 8, fantastic. Consistently 1, occasional 2 up the scale, which is brilliant. It was my intention and my aim to get everyone up the scale at least 1 point, some people more. So I kind of feel like I'm managing that. Charlotte saying +1, Susie +1, brilliant. So fantastic. So isn't it interesting how when we learn a little bit of knowledge, how it changes the way that we feel? So we're going to come to our Q&A in a moment, but I just want to take a moment to tell you a little bit about my full course. So I have, this class is called Start Getting Ready for Birth. And I have a comprehensive full course called Get Ready for Birth. It's simple progression. And it runs in 2 formats. So one format is a live weekly class, and it runs for 4 weeks, and it starts the first week of each month. So the next one starts at the beginning of April on the something like Thursday, I think. And then in May we run on a different day, and we go the same time each week. Or there's a self-guided course where basically you can sign up right now and start doing it right now. It's like at your own pace. So the live course, I teach you, we have live Zoom sessions like this. I teach you through the whole content of the course. You get to answer questions. I mentor you as we go along. They're small groups, so there's not too many people. There's lots of interaction. We ask questions, we have discussions, we get inspired, we meet others. And if you like that accountability of being like at a particular place on a particular time on a particular day, then that's going to absolutely be for you. It could be that your due date is before the end of April, in which case you don't have time to do that course, and the March courses are already started. So you might want to do the self-guided one. It's completely instant access and you kind of go through at your own pace. However, I am available to answer any questions via email, and we also have a Facebook group as well to ask questions in. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what we cover on the course. So we have 5 modules, and you might recognize what they're doing. So the first module is Anatomy and Physiology, where we talk about the baby and the pelvis, we talk about the uterus, and we talk about the hormones, and we understand comprehensively the mechanics and the biology of what's going on in the body. Then in module 2, we learn how to benefit the body, and we look at 31 different ways of benefiting the body. There's a lot. We covered 1 tonight. There's lots more. We also talk about the good birth environment and what that means. Then in module 3, we come to cope with contractions, and we first begin to talk about what to expect in labor from an experiential point of view. So we talk about what contractions feel like, how long they last, what it's like at the beginning of the labor, in the middle of the labor, at the end of labor, what to expect. But also we learn how to cope, and we look at the triangle of focus to understand the principles, but we're very practical as well. So there's breathing exercises, there's birthing positions, and we have a really practical session when we do the live session where we're, you know, sitting on our balls, we're practicing all the stuff. Labor is not a time for discovery. Now is the time for discovery. So we do it all in advance. It's very practical. It's a workshop. It's not a lesson. Then we come to module 4. Don't forget the birth partner. Really important. In fact, birth partner and their importance is tied, is a thread that runs through the entire course, but we like bring it all together in this module and kind of come together to look at exactly how to be a completely awesome birth partner and cover some of the logistics as well. And then in module 5, we talk about how to enhance your emotions, looking at shifting the mindset and making sure we absolutely feel 100% confident and completely ready for birth. And actually for most people who do the course, they have already started having a mindset shift by sort of module 2 to module 3. Like it comes actually earlier in the course. So but again, by the time it comes to 5, a lot of it's about consolidating how we're feeling and just making little tweaks there. So the course is £99. And included in the price, sorry, the live course is £99, the self-guided is £29.99. And included in the price is a course manual, 41-page manual, so you don't need to take any notes. You also get free access to a self-guided course I have called Breathing Techniques for Labour and Birth, which comes under the category of coping with contractions. And it's my first course that I ever created. It's a standalone course, but you get included access as part of this, this course. There's also a birth preferences masterclass where we discuss why you might want to write birth preferences and the kind of things you might want to include in them. There's a VIP Facebook group for course attendees, and lots of extra material goes in there. So any question that I get in the course, I go away, do research, create a video, post loads of extra links and signposting, and there's discussion in the group and other things. So it's definitely a place to tap me for more information and get access to all of that. There's also guided relaxations included in the course for downloaded to help you kind of get into a calm state. And so, you know, that's a nice little add-on. If you get the live course, you get full access to the self-guided one. In fact, I record all of the sessions of the live course and I put it in a replay just for the people who are attending that month. But you also have access to the self-guided one as another way of reminding yourself later on. So if you're quite early on in a pregnancy and you want to have a recap later, but you don't want to watch the whole video, you can just pick and choose the things that you want to refresh your memory on. So you have that access as well. And in every single session, I always offer unlimited Q&A to the people who are there. If you're doing the self-guided version, that can be via email or in the Facebook group or WhatsApp or phone or whatever. So the whole value of it is quite a lot. Everybody who has come on this live class gets 33% discount to honour the 33% extra space that we get when we come into an upright position. Now, this means that the live course comes down to £66 for the whole course. It's about 13 hours of content, and the self-guided course comes down to £20 basically. But I'm going to tell you the code in a minute of how to access that. But I'm not going to email this to you. So what I will email to you is a code that will give you 15% off, because I do get people who sign up for this class and then they never turn up. So I don't like people to get the discount codes if they haven't actually come and bothered coming to the class. So I'm going to give you a code, but you can only get it here and now. So you need to write it down or take a screenshot in a moment. So basically, in order to sign up to either of those classes, either the live class or the self-guided one, just go to birthzone.co.uk/sign-up-now. And I will send this link to you afterwards in an email, and use the code UprightBirth. So either the live class or the pre-recorded one, the self-guided, to get 33% discount. So use the code UprightBirth. And I have loads and loads of great reviews. So these are just some I've picked off Facebook. If you want to look on my Facebook page, Birthzone Online Antenatal Classes, you'll see I've got loads and loads of great reviews. I've got more on my website and more on Google. I have really great feedback. So if you're not quite sure if it's the right fit for you, have a little read of that on Facebook and you can see what other people have had to say. Some birth partners, some not. So that's a good little idea of like where I'm at. So to sign up, go to this website, use the code UprightBirth. Now, I'm not going to give this code to you in an email. So if you're interested, even if it might be like you want to sign up next week or the week after, this code will be valid the whole time. So it's no time limit. There's no like, do it within 5 minutes and then it'll disappear. It's like there for you to use when you're ready to sign up. So let's come to our Q&A if you have any questions about anything that we've covered in the course this evening, if you anything about the labour ABCs, anything about being upright, anything about the BRAIN acronym, please feel free to drop it in the chat. If you've got any questions about any of my courses and any questions about that, drop it in the chat. If you've got any questions about just something that's going on for you in your pregnancy or something that's coming up that you're not sure about, that you wanted to ask your midwife, you haven't got enough time, please feel free to drop it in the chat. I'm aware that we've kind of gone a bit over our allotted time, but that's quite normal with antenatal classes, and I will be here to answer all the questions that come up now. So unlimited Q&A. So here we go. Maria said, thank you for this evening, and has departed. So thank you, Maria. Lizzie has said, what is it you mean by upright positions in labour? Great question, Lizzie. So for the purposes of this discussion, I would say any position that's not lying on your back or your side would be an upright position. So it could be anything from being on all fours. You could be leaning on a ball. You could be squatting. Not many people choose that. You could even be standing up. As long as you're lying on your back, your pelvis is going to be held in such a way that this hole here at the bottom is fully closed. And as soon as you're not lying on your back, whichever position you're in, the bed will not be holding it in that position. So the only place where you might find that is if you are sitting on a hard chair, and you might find that it's also being closed in the same way. But there are some other benefits of being upright that would still be available to you even in a sitting position. So yeah, I hope that's answered your question. Let me know. Charlotte saying best position to, oh, chat has come and it's moving up and down because more people put something. I lost where I was. Charlotte said best position to open up the pelvis the most. Okay, this is a really great question, Charlotte. And the frustrating thing is that the short answer is it's complicated. The simple answer is there are a couple of positions that will open up your pelvis to its fullest capacity. Now, squatting is one of them. However, not that many people in the UK squat regularly and enjoy it, especially when you're 9+ months pregnant and having contractions. It's quite intense, it's quite hard work. So being in an upright position is crucial. However, there are many factors to labor and there are many ways that you cope with labor, and being in an upright position is one of them. And as I said before, there's no one thing that works for absolutely everybody. And it's the same with this capacity. Like, it could be that you could get in the position that opens your pelvis to its maximum capacity and you hate being there and it's really uncomfortable. And that hate and being uncomfortable is not good. Like, being uncomfortable is also really important. So it's not as simple. I mean, you know, you can think about squatting, for example. This is one of the things we talk about in my course. Yeah, we talk about we go through all the different positions that you might like to adopt. And we talk about which of those positions give you that maximum capacity. But we also learn about the other factors involved that are going to influence your decision about what position you're going to be in. Also, another point, and this is turning into a long-winded answer, sorry, bear with me. The other thing is that you can have like an idea in your head of a position you want to be in for labor, and you can think, oh yeah, I'm going to be on all fours, it's going to be great, and it's going to be brilliant. And this is something I did actually in my second labor. I was like, I'm going to be on all fours, I know it's a good position, yeah, I'm going to go there. I practiced, got into labor, got on all fours, absolutely hated it. I was just like, I'm not comfortable, I don't like this. But I was battling with myself. I'm like, I practiced being on all fours, I hate being on all fours, I need to be on all fours, I can't. And in the end, I had to get off because I wasn't comfortable and I wasn't happy. And in labor, you kind of intuitively, like, your body will tell you if it's not happy. So like, it's good to have a broad range of things. It's good not to fixate on one particular thing because it's not always the thing that's going to feel the best in labor as well. So that was an extremely long-winded answer. I hope it was a satisfactory one for you, Charlotte. Okay, Julie and Renato. Does having a retroverted uterus change anything in regard to my position? Okay, great question. So if you don't know what a retroverted uterus is, it basically means that a uterus that tilts in a different direction than normal. From a physiological point of view, all the ways that you will have benefits from being upright would be the same with regard to your uterus. So there's no reason why that should have an effect from a physiological point of view. Now, there are many ways we can benefit the uterus, and it could be that some of them may be affected by having a retroverted uterus. And my advice to you always is use your brain and find out about the benefits of having a retroverted uterus, the risks, the alternatives, that's not always a relevant thing, alternatives, the implications, the nothing. Find out how it affects your labor. That's where Google can really be your friend, and make sure that you inform yourself about it, because it's always helpful to be the most informed person in the room. If you have anything in your body or in your labor and birth or pregnancy that is taking you out of like the standard pathway, because often that education is not provided to you. You might get a leaflet if you're lucky, but often you are frankly expected to do that kind of research yourself. So I hope that's answered your question. It's quite a general answer, because I will admit that I'm not an expert on a retroverted uterus. But if you come into my Facebook group, and I've got 2 Facebook groups. I've got a VIP group that's open to course attendees, but I also have an open group. Many of you have joined it already. It's called Birthsang Online Antenatal and Postnatal Support Group. It's open for pregnant people and partners. It's open to anyone, regardless of whether you come to my classes. If you come to my course attendees group, then great, you can ask it there. But if you come in that group and ask that question again, I will make sure I go away and do a bit of research and signpost you to some useful information, so you can inform yourself. So yeah, have a look on Facebook. If you just type in Birthsang, like I've got a number of different groups in different locations, but that's my kind of like online one. So I hope that's answered your question. Okay, Amanda saying benefits of water birth. Brilliant question, Amanda. So yeah, but water birth can be very beneficial. There's generally 2 ways that water birth is beneficial. One is that being in water can help stimulate some of the birth hormones, which is great, but that only lasts for a couple of hours. So that initial benefit is there, but if you have a very long labor, you lose that somewhat. But the second key way of having benefit of water birth is that being in a large body of water on the whole helps people to feel in an environment very conducive to birth. So it naturally helps you get into an upright position. And even if you are in a reclined position, you're floating. So your pelvis isn't going to be held against the bottom. And so your pelvis is going to be able to open. So number one, it helps keep your pelvis open. But also the water has great pain relieving and comforting properties. So many people who get into a pool will report that they feel more comfortable, that the intensity of their sensations decreases when they're in water. And that's why most people want to be in water. There's lots and lots of other things that you can consider with water birth. And again, Amanda, in my Facebook group, my open Facebook group, and in my other one, as a matter of fact, I have got a video in there where I've posted my thoughts and reflections about water birth and added some further reading if that's something that interests you. So if you go in that group, and if you just go in the search function of the group and just search water birth, it's one of the topics in the book, in the group. And so you can find out a little bit more about kind of my views about that. And I signpost you to a couple of books on water birth that might be really useful reading for you. So hopefully that's answered your question. It's a big question, to be honest, Amanda. We could talk for a couple of hours about water birth, but hopefully that kind of gives you the lowdown. Paula is saying was very helpful. Thank you. And has gone. Thank you and goodbye, Paula. Lizzie, oh yeah, I've answered your question. Great. Val said, I've heard that when giving birth in the hospital, you are not allowed to be in an upright position, only lying on the bed. Is it true? So this is a really interesting question. And the thing is, Val, a lot of the time, this is a perception and is not true. However, often midwives are not there to coach you through labour and birth. And we think that's what they're there for, but they're not. They're there to be there and make sure nothing goes wrong. And if anything is like going on a different pathway, they're there to help you. But actually, when it comes to labour, which may last for many hours, you will be left to your own devices for much of it. And what you take in the room will shape what way they will treat you. So if you go in the room and you're like, right, I've got my ball, I've got a mat, I'm going to be upright, I'm going to be in this position and that position, I've done active birth, I've done some hypnobirthing, I've got my playlist, and can we have, the lights like this and blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's do it. Thank you so much for supporting me. They'll be like, okay, she knows what she's doing, and let her get on with it. And if you go into the room and you're like, where's the bed? And you get up on the bed, they'll be like, okay, that's where she's going to be. And very often they will empower you and they will support you in the way that you walk into the room. So what you take into the room is often what's happening. There are some situations where you'll be asked to get on a bed. If they want to examine you, for example, then they will ask you to get on the bed. Some interventions, they will ask you to get on the bed, and they will also ask you to get on the bed if you have being monitored. But you don't have to. I mean, for an examination, it's tricky not to do it on the bed. You have a choice, and it's always your choice to say, actually, I want to be on the ball. In fact, you can actually decline an examination if you want. A lot of people like to know. A lot of people like to have an idea of, you know, what dilation they are. But do you know actually how they check dilation? We're going off topic. Someone inserts their hand in your vagina and they go, yeah, you're like 3 centimeters dilated. It's not very scientific and pretty invasive. And it's not surprising that sometimes it makes the whole thing slow down a little bit. So back to the original question. This idea of being allowed to do something is something we take into the room. And oftentimes we find that in a birth setting, in the last sort of 50 to 100 years, it's been very prescriptive. And you're right, like 30 or 40 years ago, you weren't allowed to be in an upright position. But actually, there was a bit of a revolution in the 70s and 80s by a woman called Janet Velasquez, who created the active birth movement and came up with the idea of active birth. And I actually trained with Janet back in 2013. And in fact, there was this huge revolution of women coming forward and saying, we insist that we are allowed to be in birthing in the way that we want to. And actually, there's been a huge shift in the last 20 or 30 years in the way that happens. And some people are a bit old school about it, but actually, on the whole, most midwives are fairly supportive. But being confident and empowered to make your own choices about the position you are in is something that you take into the room. This is when we find that the mindset stuff that we cover in my course, and that stuff about kind of being empowered and feeling confident, like it's not just about knowing the stuff, it's like feeling confident to walk into the room and advocate for yourself. And that's part of that kind of mindset bit that we do there. I hope that's answered your question, Val. Again, it was a long-winded answer. Sorry, I am quite long-winded, but I think it's good to answer things fully. Dee and Gray have said, this has been really informative. Thank you. And Gone, thank you as well. Val said, thank you. Thumbs up. Questions are easing. We've dropped down, about half the people have left. We've still got quite a few. If there's any more questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. If you would like to come and join either my live course or my self-guided one, just go to birthsang.co.uk/sign-up-now and use the code UprightBirth, and that will get you 33% off either of the courses. Now, I won't email you that code UprightBirth. If you have any problems with booking, or if you have any other questions, please feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer them. Please come and join our Facebook group. I'm also running online pregnancy yoga classes on a Tuesday evening. And if you want to come and try that, you can use the code FREEYOGA and get your first class for free. But when you go on my booking system, which is how you booked onto this class, you probably saw that anyway. You probably saw the yoga class. It's a nice, gentle class. I'm not into like chanting and that kind of side of yoga. It's very kind of straightforward. No Sanskrit in my class, and we do birthing, breathing, and we do postures, and we talk about birth each time as well. And at the end, we often have a bit of a chat as well. So it's a bit of a time to connect with some other pregnant people, which is quite nice. So come and try that out. That's 7:30 on 7:30 on Tuesday evenings every week. It's drop in, so you can come and go as you please. Lots of thanks. Alexandra, thanks. Susie, thanks. Charlotte, thanks. Kwan, thanks. You're really, really welcome. I hope it's been really informative. I'm really looking forward to seeing you during my live class, or if it's a self-guided one, please feel free to send me an email, introduce yourself. Imogen and Adrian, thank you so much for being stars and taking part. I have had a few conversations with myself over the year, and it's probably funny for everyone else to watch, but a bit weird for myself. So
leave you to it on your own.
Thanks for being good sports. It makes all the difference.
Thank you.
I think the questions have dried up. It's now 9 o'clock. I've been talking for an hour and a half, and you're probably all like, A, dying for a wee, and B, in desperate need of a cup of tea. So I'm going to sign off the class now. Any more questions, please feel free to get in touch. Hopefully see some of you at yoga, maybe see some of you in the class. And for now, thank you very much and good night. See you later, everyone. Bye. Thanks for joining.